So where is
Okay.
everyone? Everyone is kind of coming in from all over the world.
Yeah, we have a lot of people here from Africa
Great.
and from um, East Coast, West Coast, U.S. I don't know, but you could put your information into the chat.
New
So just for
Jersey.
the
Okay,
purpose
right
of the
across the river. I'm in New York right now, but I'm actually was born in Jamaica and I'm Jamaican, Italian, and Chinese. And I've traveled a lot and my my family is, some of them are in Jamaica and we just went through a category 5 landfall in Jamaica. So that's very that's very unusual, and hopefully won't become more usual, but looks like it's trending that way. And so when I started this research, I started thinking, I got really tired of worrying through climate events, and I decided that it would be good to do something. And what I could do is use the skills that I have as an architect, trained also in urban planning, as David mentioned, economic development. I did a degree at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia before I became an architect. And as an urban designer, thinking about what are the tools, technologies, and techniques that we can use to improve our lives, to improve the lives of our children's children's children as we move forward into into the future. And what does that future look like? And if I can emerge from that process of doing a deep dive into climate, into the issue of climate, which is something that is continually evolving, the research is always evolving. So if something in here is not absolutely up to the absolute minute, please forgive me, because it's hard to keep up. um, but if I can emerge from this process an optimist, I hope that you can too, and I hope that you will see, after we go through all of these, the slides and the sort of talk and some of the visualizations that we've done, that there are solutions, and that what we lack is we don't lack solutions. We lack political will. We lack, we get really. I feel like, as someone who comes from a rock surrounded by ocean with nowhere to go, we don't have the luxury of despair. Despair is a luxury, um, and so is the idea of retreat. We started off with the idea of retreat, and then we realized that actually there's nowhere to retreat to, because everywhere on the planet is going to be affected by climate change to different degrees. Even in wealthier non-global south locations. We've seen more fires in Canada. We've certainly seen fires on the west coast of the US. We've seen hurricanes going far inland, much further north than we thought they would. We've seen mosquito-borne diseases, all of these kinds of joyful, positive things that you can think about that are related to climate change. The other thing that we've seen a lot of um, is the development of tools, technologies, and techniques and ideas across a vast variety of sectors of just genius and human genius and human ingenuity attacking this problem, right? And so, what I feel that I can do, as in my role as an architect, and I think maybe being an architect helps in this regard, is that I can help to connect the dots between people who are maybe not talking to each other, or who are in different disciplinary silos, not connecting, not understanding how the work that they're doing might actually impact others' work or be combined in innovative ways, across categories, across disciplines, across boundaries, because climate knows no boundary. It knows no, all of these borders that we have, none of that stuff. Rich, poor, you can be impacted by this, obviously. Poorer countries are less able to prepare, but this is something that is going to impact everyone. So, is it possible to share the visuals, or should I try from my other computer? Okay, so maybe you can do if you hit the tab, hold on, if you hit this little guy down here, that will make it full screen. Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about climate cities and the power of imagination. So let's go next. So one of the things that we started, I wrote a book called 2100, A Dystopian Utopia, the City After Climate Change, and it was part of Michael Sorkin's imprint. Michael Sorkin was a well-respected, incredibly innovative and wonderful mentor, friend, scholar, urban designer who started an imprint called Terraform. And he was the head of the urban design program at City College, which I believe he was the founder of. Um, After we did that, we thought, wow, there's all of these amazing things out there. It's fantastic. Like, why are people still mired in despair? And then we realized perhaps we could use another medium. What if we looked at creating a companion to the book that would be sort of a virtual reality experience where we could actually combine all of these things and put you in a headset and put you inside the experience and maybe even put you in a climate adventure. So what we've been working on now is something called Year 2180, and it's sort of like a sci-fi adventure, but it's actually based on the book, and it's based on all of the tools and technologies and techniques that we researched heavily during the book. So one of the things that I think is really incredible about virtual reality is that it has the potential um, to break the barrier of, I guess, of the self in a way, of the barrier between yourself and the experience. You can embody different perspectives in virtual reality, and so having the ability to jump into something, I think, can also be very inspiring for people in the sense that we could envision something and then we could see, okay, how could we get there, right? So one of the reasons we put it in 2180, we were looking at the data for 2100 for the book, and we said, let's jump even further in the future and say, okay, let's imagine it's a dystopian utopia, so it's not perfect. We went a certain ways to a 4-degree world. Now we're pulling it back, but obviously there was some damage that's been done. We've had to figure out a new way of living, new way of cooperating to bring things back, to the situation we have today, which probably would seem like an amazing dream from the perspective of 2180 in a 4-degree world. What you're seeing here is a visual of from one of the virtual environments we have, and we have something which you're seeing there. You're seeing part of a ship, which is a Zeppelin. Zeppelins have actually been used for a long time to transport cargo, and they can transport large amounts of cargo, and they're carbon free. So go next. So the experience in VR often triggers emotions as if you were physically there. In fact, the same mirror neurons fire when we perform an action ourselves as when we observe someone else perform the same action. This makes VR experiences a very powerful way to build empathy. And I think that empathy is something that is incredibly useful, valuable, essential in this world that we are moving forward into. We are not going to be able to solve climate alone. We are not going to be able to solve these issues independently as independent states, as independent people. We are going to have to work with the entire planet. And that means every species on the planet, considering their birthright as well. And considering the planet as something that everybody shares and that everyone is a part of, and is, I don't want to use the word custodian because I sort of think we are part and parcel. We are one of the many species on this planet that shares this planet with others. Go forward. So one of the questions we started asking ourselves through the book and through this process of working in VR is, how can we mobilize to change the future for the better? Climate change unquestionably represents the biggest challenge to the continued presence of humankind or any other species on this planet. Managing and attempting to limit the effects of global warming should be our biggest project, prompting us to marshal our collective will, energy, and creativity to design a livable solution to the inevitable shifts in weather and habitat. Pick your future. Go forward. So the year is 2180. The world is now an average of 4 degrees Celsius warmer. The UK is an archipelago of hilltop islands. Bangladesh has lost a third of its fertile land. Wildfires sweep up and melt remaining mountain glaciers of the alpine slopes. And that's from Mark Linus 6 degrees. Is this the future we want? And I think we could all answer a resounding no. Go forward. So, in collaboration with our partners Studioteca and Tekamundi, are building the year 2180, bringing the worlds of 2100
Mungu
and
connect
dystopian
mwanaka
utopia to
hizo.
life in VR as if in a virtual world.
Wala
Could you
kitu hapo
mute
kwanza
David?
nina kana
Mute
nakata na
yourself.
waisi. Wala yako kangu. Kana no.
David, I think you
Please,
can probably mute as the host.
yeah, I can't mute him for some reason.
Eh. What?
Rugaya, please mute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Darwin. Okay, so how can we motivate and inspire change? By immersing people in worlds that imagine potential future realities to generate empathy. The all-encompassing nature of the medium impacts all of our senses, replacing the physical space around us with something new and allowing us to dream bigger. Envisioning hopeful futures is the first step toward manifesting them. And so you can see some of the visualizations that we've done, both through our VR project and also from the book. The images on the bottom, the extraction and compact megacities, are imagery that we developed in our research for the book. So we have, I think, a total of 14 cities around the world, which we have heavily researched and looked into what would the climate challenges be in a 4-degree world in places like Sao Paulo or New York or Nuuk in Greenland or Moscow or Wellington, New Zealand, or what have you. The extraction cities are the cities that are in the middle band of the world, which I'll explain later, which is much more climate impacted, and the compact megacities are poleward of that. Go next. So here you can see introducing the problem. The climate crisis is here and falling on deaf ears. Where are the solutions? So on the left, you can see, and I'll just maybe I can just annotate. Hold on. So you can see here, all of this is sort of problematic and a bit difficult for large scale populations for different reasons. The yellow areas, I think, are unstable and dry areas, and then you have areas that are more prone to fires. These ones are areas that are heavily impacted by cyclonic or hurricane activity. You can see that in a 4-degree world, that encompasses most of the United States. All of the Caribbean, of course, we're quite used to that, but this goes all the way almost up to, I guess that's probably Canada. Go next. So we as architects started looking at, all right, how can we quantify the problem? And part of the problem is a problem, as I mentioned, in our thinking, right? So right now, when we think of solving a problem, we are siloed and we are separated into individual disciplines that are either competing with one another or not speaking with one another. Our way of using of allocating resources and also of utilizing space in our cities, is very kind of monothematic in the sense that you will have vast tracts of land devoted to farming, or vast tracts of land diverted, which are solar farms. We need to actually rethink that, and maybe we need to have a hybrid approach, because our current approach, by the year 2100, we will need 450% more planet than we have. And that's obviously not sustainable. Go forward. So I'm going to go back to an oldie but goodie of the stabilization triangle. Nobody really talks about this anymore because I feel that we've probably, in many ways, optimism is not really the climate optimism, I think, is a thing that a number of people are talking about. But the idea that this is our business as usual trajectory. The idea that we have 7 wedges of this, each wedge avoids 1 billion tons of CO2 emissions per year by 2055. I'm not sure if we are going to hit this, but I wanted to raise this because when we're looking at quantifying the problem, I think it's really important to start thinking this through. And again, as I mentioned, a lot of this data may have changed, probably has changed, because we've gone exactly opposite this direction of what we thought we were going to do in terms of CO2 emissions. Go forward. So when you think about that, one wedge, of solar power is that size. If we have, I think, 7 wedges, it's this. So when you start thinking about using the land and using, deploying only solar or only wind or only farming or only human habitations or only cities or only central business district, all of that stuff, it doesn't really work. So we need to think in a different way. Go forward. So here again, this is just size required to cover one wedge. So you need all of Germany covered in wind turbines. You need half of Switzerland. Nuclear starts to look very appealing because it doesn't take as much space, but that's also problematic. We would have to have new forests over the entire United States, and that's just for one wedge to meet the world's energy needs. This has gone way, way, way out of the water at this point because now we have, I think I saw somebody has an AI agent writing notes in here. AI data centers and even things like VR, all of these things, all of these tech things which we love and which are so convenient are actually using a lot of power. So we also need to think about where the energy to power those things comes from. Go next. So where in the world can we live and what can we do with this? Go forward. So we started looking and we said, okay, so we're architects and we're going to take the world as our site. So if living here is slightly problematic for large scale populations, but not impossible, then what we're going to look at is, well, who is here? Who is here? How can we share? I think we got a little bit of something here. How can we share the world's resources and also give back to all of the other species that never asked for this, right? And then also here, maybe in this area, we could also think about how we could create renewable energy installations in this area as well, and also rewild, reforest, and rejuvenate the planet that has suffered so much under our, influence. Go next. So one of the things that I think is really lovely, and I have 2 children, is thinking about how we learn through play. And actually, one of the first things that develops in babies even and children is a sense of humor, right? So solutions found through play is one of the reasons why we're very interested in virtual reality and in thinking about how we could create a place where all of us here could actually be meeting in virtual reality and we could be problem solving and talking and meeting each other, and we could have a third space that we could come to and hang out in anytime we wanted to meet with each other and brainstorm. So maintaining or increasing current living standards, here are some solutions. We need to densify, we need to go vertical. We need to increase our efficiency through technological innovation and techniques such as soft edges at the shoreline. That's a landscape technique to blunt the force of waves, rebuilding wetlands to absorb flooding, and also mangroves. We need to have vastly decreased energy for transportation and buildings. We need to concentrate ourselves in compact megacities. We need to have public mass transportation systems, green cool systems, food sources near centers of population. Perhaps we could actually farm in our cities. Vegetarian diets to reduce a carbon footprint, or at least eating as much vegetarian as you can. Hybrid spaces combining farming, energy generation, recreation, and other uses. Go next. How can we envision potential futures in VR? So how do we find the courage? And this is actually a quote from Therese Gennari, who's absolutely lovely. She's got a book called The Climate Optimist Handbook. If you don't have it, you should get it. But I'm going to read her quote because I think it's inspiring. So how do we find the courage to leave safety behind and explore new worlds that are not only out of the eye of the storm, but perhaps better and even more beautiful than anything we've ever seen to date? To choose change when everything in our environment tells us to do anything but that is to be crazy. We need crazy right now. We need people who have the courage to do things that have never been done before and who find hope in places that may appear to be nothing but dead ends. Truly, we need a world full of heroes. And I absolutely agree with that. Go next. So all hope is not lost, and these tough survivors are working hard to bring the Earth, now a hostile planet, back from the brink. In the virtual world, each player will make choices impacting their own life as well as the lives of others in gameplay. Year 2180 is a multiplayer VR game where people become fully immersed in the exciting future cities of the world. Players will connect as a community by completing in-game quests that can stop or reverse the advance of climate change. These quests will then connect virtual missions with real-world activities. Collaborate with your team in VR to stop a poacher attack in 2180 NYC, or work together with local indigenous leaders to stop flooding in 2024 Acre, Brazil. Envision and co-create bold, beautiful futures where humans not only survive, but thrive. Go next. So I'm going to go through some of the research that went into the book. And I also, if you're interested in knowing more, we also have an electronic digital copy of the book. So this is New York. So here you're seeing New York storm state. You see some of the existing building stock here, and then you see these things on top, what is that? That's actually building vertically, and we have a mycelium facade. And we're sort of starting to think about how we can densify vertically. This here is actually something that exists now, which is an inflatable storm surge barrier, which is deployed to stop flooding. Here underneath here, you see these green areas. This is actually rebuilt wetlands, and all of those things stop the force of the waves. It's actually better to stop the force of waves under the water than it is to build a wall. Here you're seeing, again, as I mentioned, different tech that we found that we thought was really interesting. And we said, well, what if we envision that 2 or 3 of these different types of things, this thing could be generating energy from solar, and it could also be filtering CO2 out of the air. There are different types of things that we found, and there's actually a tech appendix in the back of the book that references all of this. Go forward. So in 2100, New York has become the storm energy capture center of the Western Hemisphere. And so here you're seeing, something that we talk about a lot is clip-on architecture, and the idea that we have a lot of existing stuff, right? We have cities, I think, for whatever reason, as we think about how to build a better future, a lot of the time we want to have a greenfield situation. We want to say, okay, we're going to start it over. We're going to go to a new place, and we're going to build it fresh, and we're not going to make the mistakes. And it usually fails because we are wherever you go, there you are, right? So you're bringing yourself, we are a species, right? I am one of the ant builders of our species, right? An anthill builder, right? So there are patterns in what we do. And I think if we start to understand the pattern of human inhabitation, how do humans build cities? How do they expand? It's very interesting to look at those patterns. And if you don't understand the patterns, then you're never going to be able to get it right. And so thinking, well, we have a lot of stuff. Maybe we can use what we have and improve on it. Maybe we can graft onto it. Maybe we can recycle some of it. And maybe we can build some new stuff too. It's not against new stuff, but maybe the idea is that we can start where we are and we can actually improve what we have rather than feeling that we have to throw it all away and start fresh and then make the same mistakes over and over again, which is what I see happening with a lot of green projects. Go forward. So here's the master plan. So you can see here, this is Brooklyn in 2014. This is 2050. And you can already see the impact of climate change in that the Gowanus Canal is getting bigger and bigger, right? So you can see the canal here. The canal here is very contained. By the time we get to 2100, what we've done is we're showing you here, sort of almost tongue-in-cheek, this is all of the city that is actually like buried underneath the water that has been subsumed there, right? So what we imagined here is we looked at the flood line and we said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have a sponge park here. So all of this stuff that you see here is spongy stuff that planting that will absorb the force of the waves. Here, these things are actually a storm surge barrier. This exists now in the Netherlands and lots of other places. And so what we're imagining is that when you have a storm, you have the force of the waves coming here. These things swing shut, right, to close the mouth of this. But then you also have flooding that goes here that's stopped by this. And so we have a series of barriers so that by the time you get up here, the force of the waves is a lot less. And what we can do is actually put turbines underneath the water, and those can be generating power from the force of the storm. Go next. So here you're seeing that same view on a calm day, right? So you can start to see when I mentioned the sort of wetlands, when you have a wave going towards this, it is broken up by the time it gets further inland by all of these things here. So which is why it really was a mistake in a lot of ways. In a lot of places, again, in Jamaica, where I was born, we've removed a lot of mangroves. I know that in lots of places in Global South, we've done that. Mangroves are actually incredibly protective, and wetlands are incredibly protective. So thinking about how we can use all of these things, from landscape architecture, from green tech, from all of these different smart urban planning, from across disciplines to build a better world, is something that we're very interested in. Go next. So here you're seeing a section, which is it's just like a vertical cut that goes through, and you can see under here, those are the turbines in the water, and you're seeing this view again of the city with the vertical addition on top of it. Go next. Okay, so in the game, we're thinking, this is sort of some of the views. This is an underwater view, which you can see here. You can see the turbines. Here you're on a boat and you're watching the storm surge barrier, which is closing here. Here you're just in a sort of a general view of the city, and you can see that we have a green. We're using all of the surfaces of the city. So we're taking wind belts that are going to be on the facades. We have green things growing. We've got algae generators. We have all of these different things. Even in the sidewalk where you're walking, the force of your feet moving is generating power. So hurry, a fast-moving Category 7 storm is approaching New York City. Sirens are blaring and the city is humming with activity. We need your help. It's up to you to prevent the underwater turbines in Energy Park from being destroyed. You must close the storm surge barriers, enter the eye of the hurricane, and survive. So that's one of the missions that we have in the game. Go forward. This is just a general video view of New York City. Okay, go next. Here you're seeing the storm surge barrier closing. Okay, so Johannesburg, South Africa. So this is another site that we were looking at. Hold on a second, let me close the window. Okay, so in this location, all of these sites are real places that we chose in different cities. And so in this one, we found a site, and it's definitely on the outskirts of the city. And one of the things we realized as we were doing our research is that we were actually in between a couple of areas of. I mean, it was interesting. I think there was some old kind of like factory stock type of stuff, and then there's also, there also were areas where you could imagine migratory paths passing to connect different sanctuary areas. And we thought, how are we going to, because one of the questions that came up, and we would have get-togethers in the office with people from all over the world when we were working on this, and somebody raised the question early on, and they said, well, what about all of the other species? What about the animals? What about all of that? And so one of the things that we were thinking about is, in some of our sites, it would be really interesting to start to think about how, and we have this everywhere, by the way, I mean, how we can create habitats on our buildings in the same way that your body is a habitat for, microscopic, I mean, everything is interconnected, right? So here you can see a habitat for weaver birds. You can see we're using areas that human beings don't, when is the last time you scaled the facade of a tall building? Probably never. unless you're Spider-Man. So why can't we use that to grow green stuff? If we grow green stuff, that absorbs CO2. It also will provide habitat for birds. Instead of hiring a company to get rid of the birds that are nesting in the eaves of your house, why don't we encourage that? And why don't we give back to some of the other species that are living on this planet with us? Go forward. So, in a world that is ever more densely populated with human beings, all surfaces of the built environment must be thought of as potential sites for intervention. So, you can see we have solar on the roof, the facade is green. And what we're doing here is we have these megastructures. And the idea is that the megastructures are elevated. Go next. They're elevated, they're connected by a rail line, and that allows the paths of migration of different species of animals to actually pass underneath this. Go forward. So here you can see, a side view. You can go underneath here. The street that you saw before is actually up here, and you can see that all of the buildings are covered with, with growing habitat, right? So you can also see some other clusters here. Go next. Here you can see an animal bridge, and these are actually quite popular in places like Canada, where you can stop. If we put our infrastructure in the way of a migratory path of animals, you tend to have things like deer being hit on the road or other types of things happening. And so if we pay attention to where those things are, we can actually create a bridge for those other species to actually cross. Go forward. So design, create, and explore. What if your neighbor was a flock of weaver birds? You can learn to farm, build, or scale the city walls if you're not afraid of heights. A river oasis and grazing animals are hidden beneath your feet. Design innovative technologies and techniques to address the ongoing climate crisis. Retrofit cities all over the world where the coexistence of humanity and nature is a reality. Go next. So this is just approaching the megastructure that you saw before. And so we started to ask ourselves, why can't cities look like this? And again, you're going to see the same themes that are echoed in our research across the world. And in some of them, it's more focused than in others. But in general, we're trying to do a lot of the same types of approaches to urban life in different places, which is added density, public transportation, combining farming, energy generation, and all sorts of recreational spaces all together and not having separate categories. Go next. So Wellington, New Zealand. Again, Wellington, we started thinking about how, another thing that cropped up is as we were looking for sites around the world, a lot of the good land is already taken. And if it is good land, it really should be used for farming to help people, not for buildings. And so if we have to move populations and if we have to add density, where is that going to be? And so it could be over a gorge. It could actually be on the cliff side of a mountain. So how are we going to build in new ways to accommodate humanity and nature? So go forward. So between two adjacent hilltops, a direct approach is enabled by furry bridges which span the valleys far above the flood zone. So, in Wellington, we started looking at, in New Zealand, there's actually something called Wellywood. And we said, well, what if we were to relocate Wellywood away from the tsunami evacuation zone? And where is it going to go? And we found a really interesting site that's a gorge. And we thought, if we're going to utilize this, we might actually have to think about a different form of urbanism. Go forward. So here you can see, these are the peaks of these hilltops, which we've connected by what I call furry bridges. The furry bridges are actually bridges that are covered with filaments that when the wind blows, it generates energy. Go forward. So here you can see this is a furry bridge. We also thought about landscrapers, right? So why can we not build a skyscraper that goes deep into the ground? There's something that was a pilot in New York called the Low Line, where they started looking at, could they reflect sunlight deep into the earth with mirrors? And actually they created an area where you had growing plants and the sunlight was coming from above. And it was real reflected sunlight, it had warmth and the plants were growing. And it's like, this could be really interesting idea. Why, if we have to densify, we could densify in two directions. Go next. So here you're seeing some of the transportation. We were looking at, I think they have this is a funicular transportation system. They have these in Valparaiso, Chile, because there's very, very hilly. So this is sort of a view of what the public transportation could look like. Go next. So collect water, grow food, generate clean energy, and capture carbon. Innovate, develop expertise, and bring your skills to other cities. What if you could scale the vertical forest stretching 2,800 feet into the sky? Feel the warmth of the sun deep below the ground as you farm, play, and swim in a suspended waterfall. So you're going to see the exterior and interior of one of these landscaper buildings. Go next. So as you can see here, what if the building facade was more like a mountain? What if we could grow things there? What if we could generate energy there? What if we had habitats for birds there? That's what you're seeing. Go next. This is inside the same building. Okay, so Moscow, Russia. Here we started looking also at how can some of the bigger cities in the world take on more population as we shift poleward? And can we have migration in a way that doesn't create wars and that is an exchange of goods and resources? And so we actually looked at these cities as being paired in sister city pairs, so that one of the cities that would be in the sort of zone that is poleward would be a compact megacity, and it would have a sister city pair that would be in the extraction city zone. So here you're seeing, again, a graft onto the existing city, and this was done using parametric tools where we could actually shift the built mass, looking at how can we add mass and how can we allow sunlight to still penetrate down to below. This is one of those large ring roads that they have. And we said, we don't need all of these lanes. So why don't we actually take those away, make a bikeway here? And we can have areas where, again, you're seeing green areas that are meant to absorb flooding, that are meant to, again, everything that we have is absorbing CO2, is generating energy, is farming crops, because we have such a big need for that in the future. So why not put it everywhere? Go forward. So densification weaves over and through older urban fabric. And here, you can see these are some sort of just playful diagrams we have as we were kind of brainstorming how this could work. But you're seeing at the large intersections, you have those towers, and then you have that other stuff which is sort of snaking around through above the road. And then here in the fabric around it, we've added density vertically on top of existing buildings as a graft. Go forward. So here you're seeing, again, a section. So you're seeing the megastructure, and these buildings are, I think, around the height of like the Burj Khalifa, so very tall. And we're going to need that if we have a continued, if we have less land area to live on, and even the same amount of people, we're going to have to think about how we densify and how we live differently. Go forward. So immerse yourself in a new realm of infinite possibility. Shoot 760 miles per hour through the Hyperloop and soar in a Zeppelin 2,000 feet above this megacity of 20 million. Subway surf a maglev with your friends, or lead a robot army to the poachers' lair hidden beneath the twist towers of Moscow. So the poachers are our bad guys. So those are the ones who are sort of like climate antagonists. And here you can see on the upper left, you've got, again, a building that has an algae facade and has wind power, and growing green stuff that is incorporated into the facade. To the right, you see, again, vertical farming, and then below you see a street scene. Go forward. Here you're seeing the road. As the cars move over the road, they are charging and generating energy. So we even like to imagine, what does the future sound like? Go forward. What if this was a city? What if a city also could combine built up areas with wilderness? Again, the things that you're walking on are generating energy. It's piezoelectric panels. Go forward. So again, this is just a little bit of an introduction to us and the team. Go forward. These are the guys that I'm working with who are doing the wonderful work that you saw for our VR. Go forward. And thank you very much. And if you want to reach us, you can reach us at info@studioteca.com or check out our websites. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's mind blowing. It's just the imagination and the re-envisioning of the way that we're living now and thinking of the way to build. So I mean, I'm sure that there are lots of questions, unless people are just so astonished that they don't have questions. But let's start with Gilbert from Kenya. Go ahead, Gilbert.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, before I ask my question, it was very fascinating to see how the bridges of animals, the furry animals, which I really appreciate. So my question now is based on the power of imaginations. We have said that imagination and innovation can reinvent our collective future for the better. Now, my first question is that what systems protect climate imagination from dying in bureaucracy? The last question, please. Can imagination justify false solutions? In this context, I would like to highlight is we imagined plastic recycling would save oceans. Then my question is structured as follows. How do we fact check imagination before it wastes 10 years? Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that's a lot to unravel. I think, I'll answer the question first about bureaucracy, right? So I think if you think about, it's very interesting because I think, we've been struggling through like the UN and the nation state, right? We've been looking for a top-down solution for this and for many other issues for a long time. And then actually, in doing the research, we realized that actually cities have a tremendous amount of agency and power and control and power for good over this issue, because that's where a lot of the actual carbon footprint lies, right? So even if we don't wait for certainly, like, we're not waiting for the United States government to tell us, the federal government to tell us that we have to do certain things, right? And that's not coming anyway. But in New York City, we can say, you know what, we want to do we want to do pilot programs. We want to try different things. We'd like to try, and we can do start where you are, start in your neighborhood, start in the places that you know, right? The problem with bureaucracy a lot of the time is actually when you're dealing with a bureaucracy and you're an outsider, right? So everyone is an insider somewhere. You're an insider in your own community. You know how to get things done in your own community. I don't know how to get things done in your community, but you do. If you and I can work together, we can solve it. And if we can convince one of the bureaucrats, we might actually be able to cut through some of the fat. If we do a pilot or a test program and we show that this thing can really work, because you know what? As we're doing this war in Iran and all this kind of stuff, we are just seeing the last death throes of the carbon economy, I believe. Uh, all of these things that I've mentioned are everywhere. There's no Strait of Hormuz for sunshine, right? It's everywhere. Everyone has access to sunshine. So why are we not doing more of these things? And I think some of it has to do with, again, with maybe some of the problem is the top-down centralized approach. Maybe that is part of the problem. And I did mention, habits of mind and problems in terms of how we conceive of the issues, right? And that we're sort of trapped in, well, we have to do it this way. And maybe we don't have to do it in the ways that we're used to working. I think that when I mention imagination, it's not just, the pretty pictures or thinking of something cool, but it's also thinking your way outside the box or outside of the way that we usually do things. And I think that if we do that, we can inspire. And I think that this thing has and will gain its own momentum. And I don't remember the other question. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So here's a question from Zara, who's wondering, how do you fund your work?
How do I fund my work? My gosh. Well, it's not very easy. We actually have gotten some grants. We won a Sundance Stars Collective Imagination Award at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival. I'm an architect, so basically any extra money that I have from my practice goes into this, but it has not been easy. I won't lie about that. This is something that I've decided to do because it's near and dear to my heart. It's my life's work, and I think that it's really, really important. And so I have sacrificed a lot to do this. I'm seeing some people, yes, this is how do I fund, and some other people have mentioned, wanting to reach out to me. I mean, please, reach out to me. Like I can give you guys I think, if you email me at info@studioteca.com, I'm the person that checks that email.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, and thank you for doing this. Yes, it's not easy, but it's so valuable. So
Thank
Mira is a fellow artist who also uses VR. So go ahead, Mira.
Thank you so much, David. And Vanessa, thank you so much for the presentation. It was really, really wonderful to see all of these fantastic worlds that you're building as part of year 21 AT. Like David said, I'm also a supporter of VR's potential as a channel that can reach way more people while delivering an immersive experience. However, from my experience, there is a real risk of seeing these VR experiences as merely fancy cinematic experience or gameplay, right?
you.
So, how do you connect these fantastic scenarios with what the players or the viewers can humbly act in their daily life? Like, what's their key takeaway and action guidance in taking what they see and affecting change in their own community and their own life?
Well, again, this is this is my life's work and this is a big project. So, we have a very big idea. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we're going to keep trying. So, one of the things that I think would be really wonderful, and this comes from my experience in international affairs and economic development and doing projects around the world where I worked with some environmental engineers. We did a project where we were looking at doing an innovation transfer from one place to the other. And so there was a successful project in Egypt with the Zabaleen, who are the traditional trash collectors of Cairo. And so we met with the Zabaleen, we went to their community, and we are looking at how can we take this amazing project that was so, I mean, the whole community became a recycling thing. I mean, it just generated incredible. Just, I mean, they seeded some funds into they developed a composting plant and they seeded some funds. But from there, 10 years later, after the start of the project, you had people who had generated their own plastics recycling plant, their own, and it became sort of the recycling district, right? Which was really, really interesting. And for me, one of the things that was also really great is that it wasn't expensive tech that local people couldn't repair. It was very something that they could do, that they could repair, that they knew. And, we went to a recycling plant and the guy was like separating everything into colors and he was making things and selling them. And this just created wealth in the community. We throw so much away. We're going to go back to those places where we threw things away and we're going to mine them because there's so much value in them. So thinking about what the takeaway could be, I love the idea. I really want us to commune together because we have these places, like you guys are all over the world. I love that. That's incredible. But then we leave here, we're inspired, and we say, okay, well, what now? We click off the computer, we're separate. I want to create a place where I can click in and you're there. And you know what? I could put a headset on. I could use a smartphone. I could use a PC. We have, some of my team is in Bangladesh, and we actually have, we've done things together where somebody only had a smartphone, and we were able to be together in an environment, and that's really important to me also for Global South. I don't want this to be something that is an expensive technology and that is only something that wealthy people in the North can afford to do. I think that everybody needs to participate. The other thing is, so you can have teams that are virtually doing these missions, right? There can be a point system or things that you do in gameplay where that actually funds different organizations that are doing good work around the world. I mean, it's so interesting. I don't know if you guys are familiar with EVE Online, but EVE Online is this game where, ships explode in the virtual space and like real dollars explode. I mean, it's really incredible. These types of things these are things that are happening right now, right? So we could have virtual teams, but we could also get together and we could do projects. We could go, as my family has done for years, to Jamaica, and we could work with local schools. We could work with women's cooperatives and who are making honey and help them. How can they get that to market? We could do all sorts of things, right? Or how can they do this more sustainably? Where we could actually go places and do meaningful work with communities and meet outside of the virtual platform. So, I have, again, like, I have so many ideas, and all of these things take funding. And I give talks because it gets us a little bit further down the road towards that. Michael had no funding for us. He was a genius. He was a brilliant. I'm so eternally grateful for his support. But he set up my first talk, which was my book launch, and I got an invite and an invite and an invite. And I told David when I met with him, I've never said no to an invite. So I've given all kinds of talks, and it gets us a little bit further down the road. And you don't know where the road is going to go, but it's definitely going somewhere bigger and better. And, we'll see where we end up.
Yep, I totally agree. And that's been my experience as well. Like, you just never know what the next point is going to lead you to the next one. So yeah, definitely would like to connect with you further. And I'll email you. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Yes, please email me.
Thank you.
So we have actually maybe the majority of people are from Africa, and I think your message about that this can come from the places that are underfinanced but full of talent, as demonstrated by the people here, I think is an important message. I do want to I just put in the chat that we're starting a new project called Africa Rising Youth and Climate Justice. And so we're going to have our first virtual convening on June 4th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, New York time. put information about that. I'd be interested in, and we have some of our great African colleagues on the call. I'd be interested, in addition to Gilbert, whether anybody else wants to react to what you've heard from Vanessa, and what the and Vanessa just put her email into the chat as well. Um, you know, so go
I
ahead,
as
Jan.
as let me just say something
Okay,
really quick.
before Jan,
As
yeah.
someone who was born in Global South, I do not think that it is a one-way pipeline of intelligence and talent and help going from the north to the south at all. I think that the solutions actually might come, from places like Jamaica or places like, again, anywhere. That is, if you think about some of the places that are the most hard hit, are also the places that are the most motivated to find a solution and that may think, in Jamaica, we cannot assume that the government is going to be able to help us. So we have to find other ways of doing things. And that actually is innovation, right? And, innovation and working in a different way. And maybe that could actually help the US or Europe or other places.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, creativity comes from opportunity, and sometimes from need, whereas um, some places like here, we maybe don't have the imagination. That's actually, I mean, that's why we're launching this Africa Rising project, to show creativity of Africa, and by extension to the global South. So go ahead, Jan.
Hi. Well, I am a biologist, so I work between Oaxaca, Mexico, and here in New York, and I focus principally with kids. And I want to say, like, the word that you just guys were saying, like, creativity and imagination, that's something that kids have a lot. And I wish that when we adults, we are talking about all these things, we can share more of what we already know to them, because they are the ones who I think they're going to face a lot of the issues. And also they are going to be the ones who build in these incredible cities, if possible, and I think you can, I mean, I don't want to get into that, but it's how they create something that we adults sometimes we forget, because they are still thinking out of the box. Yeah. And I really like the presentation a lot. And in terms of the presentation, I have a lot of questions. No, my first question is, and I maybe possible to focus more of what you were saying. Like one of your team members was saying, like, well, what's going to happen with all these other creatures, the diversity, and when we are talking about biodiversity, it's a very uh, complicated and delicate and incredible subject. And I don't know if at the speed of the human population is growing, we are really thinking seriously about taking care of all these other creatures. And I really like to think about having all this nest, and well, that's one of my questions. And the other question is about, taking care of something. It's very, very complicated. Yeah. When we are working with gardeners, most of them are seeing the challenge of taking care of a garden, because you see weeds growing over here, that sometimes weeds are not so terrible. You see all this cleaning that you need to do. So in these future cities, do you also envision like the power of creating new jobs?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's so interesting because I think we could look at this time that we're in as a terrible time, and it is in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of turmoil in our world, but we could also look at it as a time of tremendous opportunity to rebuild and remake human life on this planet. And I think that I really think that human beings don't change easily. We don't change unless there's a crisis. We don't change unless it's back to the wall, right? And we really have that now. And it's an opportunity to look and say, is this working? Is this system that we have, is it worth saving, or is it perhaps maybe time to go and see if there is some other way, like you're saying, like the children thinking outside of the box through play, right? How could we do it differently? um, and one of the things that's very interesting is in all of this is it's not just urban design, but it's also reimagining how we live with one another. I mean, when you saw the resource quantification, we need four and a half more Earths than we have. Well, that's insane. We can't continue to live that way. And actually, it's very lonely. I mean, there's a huge epidemic of loneliness in the so-called West, right? Where people are separated into, you ask yourself, is the nuclear family, was that a good idea? People are really struggling. And I look, in other places where you have more of a village, and it's so much easier to care for children in a village type of format, um, where you have multiple adults who can take care of the kids together, right? That's easier than having a nuclear family and having an arsenal of nannies or what have you, right? So thinking about the other creatures that we live with and how they have agency and they have rights and they have voice too, and the planet itself has rights, I think is very important. But the thing about that too is that it makes sense to do this. It doesn't make sense to go the other way. It doesn't make even economic sense to do so. And we're going to see that doing the right thing in terms of renewable energy, et cetera, just becomes what, it's not even a partisan issue. It's like extracting energy through a resource which is rapidly dwindling. That's, doesn't make a lot of sense to continue to plow more time, energy, and money into that when we have something that is so plentiful. We have wind, we have solar, we have all of these other types of things, even human movement, even the body, the body in a building, the bodies that are in the high rise, which are you're generating heat from your body, right? There are all sorts of things that can be recycled and used in different ways if we think innovatively. And there are people thinking about all of these things. We just need to communicate across disciplines and across. That's why, one of the reasons I said yes to David is like, fantastic. I'm speaking to people all around the world and in Africa. I love that. Let's talk. Let's do things. Let's make a pilot. Let's show people that it can be done. I'm not about, thank you for the heart. I'm not about sitting here and saying, oh, we have to wait for the UN to decide to do this. Scrap that. Let's do it. Let's do 2 blocks. Let's do, your village or mine. Let's do, again, like the places that we know. We can start to do these things right away, and we can start to connect with one another and take inspiration from our successes and bring joy back to, and community back to international relations among ourselves, rather than like warring over a way of life and over dwindling resources that are not worth fighting for. I hope I answered your question.
Very well said. So, do you see these changes that need to happen? When you said, we need crisis, and I think your point of um, the Iran war potentially being one of those tipping points, because of it's just showing the vulnerabilities of dependence on oil. Um, so, what do you see as potential pathways to rethinking beyond just showing and discussing and talking? I mean, you mentioned pilots in a couple of places. I mean, maybe talk a little bit more about that if you don't mind.
Sure. One of the things that I love about about this kind of work, and thinking outside of the box is actually getting to meet people from all over the world and see different ways of life. And one of the things that I've gotten to do that I think was really incredible is through something called Project Drawdown, which you guys have probably heard of. There was a
Yeah.
Drawdown Learn, which was in New York State, in a place called, oh God, what's the name of it? Oh, my brain isn't working. But anyway, I'll remember it later. But it was a really great conference. And at that conference, I met someone who actually, David, that's the reason that I know David, is because Felicia Davis, who is the head of the HBCU Green Fund, invited me to give a talk. She also invited me to Atlanta. She invited me to give a talk at the Climate Justice Summit at Columbia. At that same conference, I met Seychum Hawkstorm and Roberto Mucaro Borrero, who are two Indigenous leaders, and they're involved with the UN, with Indigenous rights, with climate justice. And actually, I did a couple of design studios at Columbia with my team as well involved. Um, I worked with Hawk and his wife, Sara Yawanawa Bergen, and she is indigenous from the state of Acre in Brazil. So we did a couple of design studios. Andrew Homick, who works with me, taught those with me at Columbia. We did one where we looked at Hawk's land and looked at what we would do for the year 2100 um, to safeguard their community in upstate New York. And then we did another one where we looked at Sarah's community in Brazil and how we would handle their problems. And it's very interesting because they have a lot of flooding. Hawk just posted on Instagram that they're having catastrophic flooding right now, and it's actually out of season. It's out of the usual season when this is happening. Where they live, it's a village that's so remote that it takes a few days to get there, and there are no roads. The river is the road. But it's been very interesting working with them and working with their communities to also start to question the Western conception of the land, of humanity at the apex of the triangle of life as the most intelligent species on the planet. The way that you look at the land. I mean, one of the things Hawk said before he took me and the students on a walk through his land in upstate New York is he said, we're going to do a forest walk and you're never going to see the forest the same way again after you do a forest walk with me. And it was really interesting because there were two types of serpentine kind of formations on the land. And one of them was a female, one of them was male, one of them was directional. And there were these rock walls and they were very low to the ground. If you didn't know, if you were not, I've seen these things all throughout New York. Um, they're just everywhere. It's just collections of rocks that you see and you just think, I don't know what that is if you don't know, right? There's also weird trees that are pointing in a direction that are growing in a strange way. He said, those are directional trees. Those were made to grow that way, and the branches are pointing towards something interesting. Usually it's a water source, maybe a source of food. So your eyes are opened to the forest, and you realize that the forest the forest is not just this kind of um, you know, uh, unimaginable, ununderstandable type of thing, right? And I remember as we were walking, the female serpent was wider, and we could walk on her back, right? And there were at intervals trees or collections of rocks, and there was a tree going out of some of them. And he said, these are burial grounds, and the trees are literally our ancestors. So someone would die, and they would put rocks and they would plant a tree. And so that is a very, very incredibly deep, circular, and beautiful relationship with the earth that everyone should cultivate, right? That kind of thinking, I think we need to change our minds and we need to see the possibilities. And when we do that, when we break free of the mental barriers that we've had of the systems that make us think that there's only one way of doing something, and that comes from up top, somewhere more powerful than me, and I can't do anything and I'm just puny, small me with no power. Every single person who is alive right now has an incredible relationship to history because we are the last ones that are going to be able to change this for every generation to come. So that is, no matter how small you think you are, you can't do anything, you have an incredible place in history. And there's a responsibility that comes with that too.
Okay, so here's uh, oh, Ronnie says, just another point of information. I've just visited Australia, no litter. Yes, I live in New Jersey and frequent New York City. Since my Australia travels, I wonder if here in the city, in the metro area, we created litter. Okay, just kidding. Thank you for the future thinking. Sorry,
You
we have to
know,
go.
my mother told me that in Jamaica, before they got all of these black plastic bags, which are just, we have these black bags, they're called scandal bags. So they're black plastic bags and everything goes in them. Before we had that, we had baskets. And you would see basket trash by the side of the road. People would carry something in a basket and throw the basket, and the basket would biodegrade. And actually, they outlawed the scandal bags. They said, no more, we can't, we're not going to have these. We banned like single-use plastics. Look at Costa Rica. Costa Rica is an incredible example of a place in the global south that is doing all kinds of incredible things. They've had so many, days where the entire country is powered by renewable energy that it's not even a remarkable thing anymore. So there are incredible examples of successes all over the world if we look for them.
Well, this is great. That's probably a very nice um, point to end on is looking around the world as we have this global community here. Jan has her hand up, so go ahead, Jan. We'll get to you, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. I just want to set like you were saying a very good insight knowledge. Like we already have knowledge that we are applying in some parts of the world. Um, and I guess this question is more about a topic that can be addressed in a different session about why we are not doing what we know is right, even that we know is
Mm.
right. Um, and when I say we, I'm not talking only about the government. I'm talking also about us individuals, because the power of each one of us, I think, it's gonna be the trigger for the change. And of course, we need the enforcement from the government, yeah, to make us sometimes do the right things, no? But why? Why we are not changing our behaviors? No, it's sorry. When you were saying the plastics bags, you remind me at Columbia University, I was in this class, and the teacher was doing a research in several parts in Africa. And one of the things that he pointed that day was that a lot of these African cities and communities, they were using a lot of plastic bags. And now the streets were so dirty, with these plastic bags that were not able to decompose. And when you said this thing about Costa Rica, they are doing the right thing, but in the back, it's not just the people; it's also the government, no, and
Yeah.
and also the basket industry. It means an income for the locals when they are
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
the locals' resource to create these beautiful baskets. Yeah, it's part of the process of creating jobs. Well, anyway, we can talk much more about that, but the why
We
we
should
are not.
definitely. Why are we not doing it? Because we've been led to believe that we're small and that nothing that we do matters and that we don't count and that we don't have an impact, right? And that's not true. And I think sometimes, as I mentioned, I ask myself these questions too, like, why are we having this war? Why are we having all of these? In my introduction in the book, I mentioned some things that go along with climate and definitely issues of migration and wars over resources and all of those things are part of that. I just didn't think that it would happen this fast. At the same time, the pace of innovation of solutions has also been faster than I thought. And I think what we need to do is we need to talk to each other. And we need to realize that actually lots of great things are happening. We just don't, it just doesn't, our current system of clicks and likes and all of that kind of stuff on the internet, you know, the war gets clicks and likes. Somebody being nice to their neighbor doesn't get the same amount, right? So some of it is that is like the attention economy, where attention goes. And like I think as humans, part of our biology is actually hardwired to look out for threats, right? Because that keeps you alive. And so some of that type of threat behavior um, has been harnessed by the tech industry to keep us addicted to tech in different ways, or to get your likes and whatever. And so some of the other stuff, maybe that doesn't do the same way. It's saying okay, Costa Rica and Jamaica got rid of those black bags. Well, there's still some of them there, but one thing I'm thinking about too is I think I read, maybe it's in Germany, that they've started, or maybe it's even been that way for a while. They said, if you're a company and you make a product, right? So I make little bottles of, and we have a huge problem because of poverty in Jamaica. So people have single serving of everything. So that means you have lots and lots of little bottles of soda and drinks and things like that. If I make that and I put that out into the world as a company, I should be responsible for dealing with it, right? It shouldn't just go out in there and then somebody else's problem. It's washing up on the beach. We have, you can find on beaches like, things from Indonesia, like little single serve bottle of something that has gone across the entire ocean and is now on a beach in Jamaica. So who is putting this out in the world needs to have some responsibility to take it back. And actually, as consumers, as human beings who buy these products, we have a tremendous amount of power, because we could say, you know what, if you're going to make that and you're not going to take it back and it's just going to go out into the public commons and be a hazard, then we don't want to vote with our dollars. We're going to vote elsewhere to companies that are more responsible. And that has power. I think we started realizing the power of boycotts and things like that just now. I think people are starting to realize that. And there's also power in, again, as I mentioned, your own community. What are people doing in their own communities, on your own stomping grounds? I talk to people at universities all the time who feel powerless. And I'm like, my God, you are the reason the university is here, students. They feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do. I'm like, you are the reason that your money is going to pay for your education. That's why this whole giant thing is here. If you are upset about something and you raise enough of a fuss, if you look at the apartheid divestment movement, the student movements that took place around the world, that was incredibly effective. We need more of that. Those things are effective, and we can do those on, as far as climate and environmentalism are concerned too. We absolutely can. I think that, again, it's just that a lot of these things are not publicized, but there's a lot of, if you scratch the surface, there's so much to be hopeful about. And I think the hope is also, it's time for a change, isn't it? It is time for a change. It's time for a world in which we share more. It's time for a world in which we don't have, do we need McMansions? People are miserable and lonely in their McMansions. We don't need that. Maybe we can, one example I give people all the time is, why is a sort of university residential college experience, it's 4 years of people's lives, they value that so much, and they think, oh my God, they look back to those 4 years as the best years ever. Why? It's walkable. It's small. You have a tiny room. Your room is nothing. The campus is your home. You repeatedly run into your friends on the campus. You're talking and thinking about interesting things. If we took 5 years off and we said all of us are going to work on solving the issue of climate and solving the issue of all of these things, we'd have something so interesting to do, and we could solve it. Actually, it probably would take less than 5 years, So I'm just saying, like, the way of life, like, think about college life and why people love that so much. Why could our cities not be more like that? So there are lots of examples in our world that we have now that are already there that we can look to for inspiration. And, I'll say it again, please reach out to me, info@studioteca.com. I'd love to hear from some of you. We can definitely talk about collaborating. I'd love to hear what you are working on. And thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Vanessa, and thank you everybody who joined us and are still with us. We will share the recording as long as we have your email address, and I think we have everybody's email address now. And this is our last of our main climate education 2-month project, but we will be having our special webinar on June 4th for our new Africa Rising project, and we will be resuming regular webinars in the fall. And for those of you who have participated, organizing events and other things, we thank you very much for doing that. And please stay in touch with us. We'll be continuing to pump out emails to you. And we really thank you all for being part of the solution. And especially we thank you, Vanessa, for inspiring us.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. It was really great. Thanks so much. And thank you, David.
Our pleasure.
Bye-bye.